2016, ¿vale? Así ya podemos ver nosotros, retuitear y tal. Porque además es muy importante para lo que viene en cuenta ahora. Quedaros con las cosas. Luego, si veis detrás de las aplicaciones, hay un ticket de este tipo. Quien no la tenga, que lo revise y lo pida, ¿vale? Es para el café de la tarde, ¿vale? Cuando sea el café de la tarde, creo que de 4:30 a 5, vais a la cafetería y lo entregáis y lo pedís lo que queráis. Más cosas. Durante el café de por la mañana, que es de 8 a 12 menos cuarto, si no me equivoco, vamos a hacer una especie de concurso. Si veis en vuestras acreditaciones, tenéis un superhéroe y un villano, ¿vale? Como está en la temática va de esto. Durante el networking queremos que busquéis a vuestras parejas correspondientes de villano y superhéroe, ¿vale? Veréis puestas por pegados por la pared también unos cartelitos de este tipo.
Pues sabemos que había gente en su infancia.
Para que se os sea más fácil también. Entonces tenéis que buscar a alguien que sea vuestra pareja. Si tenéis a Capitán América, tenéis que buscar a alguien que sea de school, ¿vale? Y haceros una foto, subirla al Twitter y tenéis que poner fan 2016, ¿vale? Una vez que las tengáis subidas, tenéis que ir a donde se dan las acreditaciones, a Sandra, a Teresa o a Pau, enseñarle la foto y ellos os darán un regalo, ¿vale? ¿Claro? ¿Alguna pregunta de estos? Bueno, más, este es un plano que os hemos metido a todos en las bolsas, ¿vale? De dónde podéis comer. Yo os recomiendo que saliendo de esta escuela, en la diagonal, hay un recito que se llama Plaza Mayor y hay algo para todos para comer, ¿vale? Pero no obstante, os hemos puesto varias cosas, varios sitios para comer y lo tenéis todo dentro de las bolsitas. Y luego para los que tengáis la cena, este año va a ser, el año pasado fue monólogo y este año va a ser la fiesta de la movida madrileña, héroes de la movida. Ya, vale, pues se enteran. Bueno, el sitio lo está puesto también en la web, pero para recordaroslo está en un hotel cerca de Plaza España, ¿vale? Que es el Hotel Mayorazgo. Luego desde aquí darle las gracias a los patrocinadores, a de sistemas, a 233, a Scrum Manager, a Alistair y a Plastic SPM, ¿vale? Por vuestra ayuda.
Y todas las gracias a la aplicación, a Yoya, a la universidad, que se ha portado súper bien con nosotros, nos ha dejado un espacio como bien lo hemos querido, a Mari, a Noemí, a Sandra, a Teresa, a Pau, a los voluntarios. Lo he pasado, nos hicimos entre los tres, más Noemí que está aquí, toda la bolsa, este año tenemos voluntarios y vimos un montón de gente. Me he pasado las 3 horas y pico en la bolsa y este año lo hicimos en media hora. Muchas gracias a todos y espero no haber dejado a nadie. Y nada, antes de empezar con el plato fuerte del día, como hicimos también el año pasado y solemos hacer, solo proponeros un poco el contexto de dónde ha venido todo esto. Por esto alguno lo conocerá, si está Pablo por aquí, supongo que lo conocerá, creo que sí está por visto. Y supongo que no es el contexto de dónde nació esta jornada. Y bueno, nació un día comiendo ahí, por supuesto el fútbol, ¿no? Fue en Santiago, en unas jornadas que había sobre calidad de software. Entonces allí comiendo estábamos unos cuantos y se nos ocurrió un poco intentar fomentar más lo que es la parte de gestión diferente, alejada de lo que es la gestión tradicional que nos hemos encontrado siempre en todos los sitios. Bueno, de hecho le dimos vueltas a un montón de maneras de hacerlo, creíamos que faltaba ese foro de referencia, había muchos foros de programación, específico de actividad, pero echamos de menos esa parte que luego el tiempo hemos acabado llamando del people, de gestión ágil. Bueno, para aquellos tiempos, esto fue en 2014, algunos de los que estuvisteis allí lo recordaréis, incluso quisimos traer gente de fuera, referentes, aquella gente de los cuales habíamos leído tantos libros, de los cuales nos habían motivado para hacer muchas cosas y yo recuerdo que en aquel momento incluso pensamos que todavía no estaba preparado el sector para traer gente, a diferencia de lo que va a pasar hoy, como cual quería, por eso quería empezar a prestar atención. En el 2014, que ni siquiera existía esta conferencia, dijimos, bueno, como traigamos a alguien de fuera, probablemente no venga nadie. Y desde el 2014 hasta ahora, que son unos 2 años, la verdad que la cosa, afortunadamente, no de esperanza, ha cambiado bastante. De hecho, a partir de aquello, del 2014, de aquella comida, no nos atrevimos a montar lo que era una conferencia, lo que estamos haciendo ahora. Montamos llama más la parte humana, la parte de la gestión ágil y similar. Por si alguno, y ya en 2 segundos termino, no conocía el origen de esto, otra cosa que también me gusta comentar es que es un tema que viene del año 77, ¿vale? O sea, que ahora está de moda, la gente habla esto del peopleware, pero ya un señor que se llamaba Newman, en el 77, dijo que estaba bien el software, que estaba bien el hardware, pero que nos faltaba una parte que era el peopleware, ¿vale? Por razones que necesitarían más tiempo, podríamos profundizar sobre por qué hasta la fecha de estos últimos años no le hemos dado tanta importancia a esta parte humana. Quizá quienes más lo que conocéis en términos, quizá vamos a caer más por este libro de aquí, que es el libro de Marco, que es el más famoso, que se llamaba como tal People, ¿vale? Nosotros el año pasado y siempre solemos coger algún texto de referencia del libro de referencia, que es el Peopleware. El año pasado algunos recordaréis que hablábamos de los programadores tipo máquina muerte, que bueno y los tres con los hermanos, ¿vale? Y este año hemos cogido como que inspirar la PAM en otro texto de hace mucho tiempo, el libro del Peopleware, y es uno que habla sobre la felicidad, ¿vale? Habla sobre el estar bien en el trabajo y sentirse feliz y que eso te haga trabajar más, ¿vale? Entonces ya decía de Marco que en nuestra sociedad está mal visto estar bien en el trabajo. O sea, si tú estás feliz en el trabajo, la gente asocia que no estás trabajando. Y no había ninguna razón científica ni nada de sentido para que esto sea así. De hecho decía de Marco que muchas veces, bueno, muchas veces y casi siempre, alta productividad y estar bien va relacionado con estar feliz en el trabajo. Por eso además hemos querido dar el toque ese físico a la conferencia, metiendo el tema de los sucedentes. Y entre un montón de gente que ha hablado sobre el tema del peopleware, ya os he contado de Newman, os hablé de Marco. Para mí una de las personas que más ha liderado intelectualmente el pensamiento en el mundo del software respecto a lo que es el peopleware es Alistair, que estamos con nosotros, lo cual es un mega evento en lo que es la conferencia, porque la verdad es que tenemos ahí de fuera. Bueno, yo ya he leído seguro que lo que soy de mi generación igualmente, pues desde hace años he leído prácticamente todo lo que tenía. El blog, los libros, los que recordéis, los use cases, pues para mí es el que tiene los textos más sensatos que ha escrito nadie sobre casos de uso. Y bueno, quiero sacar una cita de él, como introducción a su ponencia. Es una cita que está en un artículo en su blog y también está en uno de sus libros, y es de nuevo de hace bastante tiempo, estamos hablando de hace unos 17 años, ¿no? Y hace 17 años ya Alistair decía que las personas es la parte más importante del desarrollo y además es algo no lineal, el componente de primer orden y de mayor influencia en el desarrollo del software. Y en general en la gestión de cualquier proyecto de creación intelectual. Y ya sin más, pues me voy a declarar que lo vamos a hablar mejor que yo, ¿vale?
Però so that's the end of my Spanish. Okay. This is a great pleasure to be here, particularly for me. The title of the conference, with the word peopleware in it, was very exciting to see. So when I received the invitation, part of the excitement was that there were peopleware right in the conference title. I normally speak very quickly, so I'll try to speak a little bit more slowly so that it's easier for you to follow. There are a lot of interesting things that have been happening in the world of Agile software development in the last maybe 2 years. My study of Agile software development goes back to 1991, when I was asked by IBM to create a process and methodology for small talk C++ projects. And I didn't know anything about that at the time. So my boss said, well, why don't you go and interview some projects and find out what works and what doesn't work. We don't have any, competing existing products, so just find out what works. And I started then interviewing projects and doing research. 10 years later, I got my PhD from the University of Oslo in 2003. So maybe 12 years later, out of all of that research, interviewing projects, finding what works and doesn't work, I produced a PhD. And what I found in the interviews was that what people were doing that made them successful was not anything written in any of the books. We couldn't understand it at the time. In 1991, 2, 3, we had no idea what was going on. So all of my work has been to try to work out why do things work, what's connected to what. So in this sense, I'm an anthropologist. I go to the projects and I study what they're doing. And I'm a theoretician, and I try to figure out what's connected to what. So that takes us to the 1990s. And in the 1990s, I was giving lectures on what we call lightweight processes. And we were trying to get people to not do so much writing and not so much ceremony and not so much heavy stuff, but do more face-to-face talking, people together. So that's what I was doing in the 90s. At the same time I was doing that, Kent Beck was writing down extreme programming. In England, the people were writing down a very beautiful method called PSDM, maybe you already heard. A guy in Australia, Jeff DeLuca, was making a thing called feature-driven development, FDD, and Ken Schraber and Jeff Sutherland were busy working out Scrum. So we were all doing something kind of similar, and then Bob Martin said one day in 2000, he said, hey, a lot of us sound kind of alike. Maybe there's something in common. I would like to write a manifesto. So in 2001, he collected some people, those of us who were already active in the field, Jim Highsmith, the pragmatic programmers, lots of people. And in 2 days, we wrote the Agile Manifesto. We just said, this is what we think we're doing. We think it's different from what other people are doing, and we think it's good. So we wrote this manifesto, and that was the beginning of the Agile movement. So then what happened over the period of the next 5 years was the extreme programming people, they got tired and quiet, and the Scrum people got very energetic and made the Scrum Master certificate. And then Scrum became the popular way of working. So now more people doing Scrum and less people doing extreme programming. But the bad part about all of that is that as thousands and hundreds of thousands of people start trying to do this thing called Agile that we were trying to understand about in the 90s, they kept asking questions and they say, how do I do that? How do I do that? How do I do that? And every time they get an answer, Ken Schraber writes a new book, and then people think they have to do everything in his book. And so Scrum, which started off very simple with 5 sentences, now has 118 rules. So there are at least 118 rules in Scrum now. But that's a mistake. It's not supposed to be 118 rules. It's supposed to be 5. Well, let's see in this talk why it is that there's 118 and not 5. But when you see Scrum, If you see lots of rules, that's not Scrum. Scrum is 5 rules. Scrum is not 118. So a couple of years ago, I started talking about the essence of Agile. What is the center of Agile? How do you make it simple again? What should you pay attention to make it work without it being complicated? And a friend of mine asked me to really, make this a proper thing. So I did some research, and I'll talk about the research. And I now call it the heart of Agile, corazon, or essence. It's essence, the heart, the center of Agile. And it has only 4 words. Not even 4 sentences, not even 5 sentences. 4 words, that's all you need. Colaborar, entregar, reflexionar, ameliorar. Mejorar, right? That's all you need. You don't need anything else. And in this talk, I'll walk you through that and how it becomes interesting, complicated, simple, complicated, simple, complicated. So I have some concepts for you. The first thing is to understand what is the problem we're trying to solve. What is it that we're dealing with? We're trying to understand something. What is the something? So here on one slide, I'm going to describe every kind of team design activity. Could be business, could be theater, could be publication, could be software, could be engineering, could be many things. Every kind of team design activity looks like this. But this is software, so we'll talk about software. The first thing is that there are people. So what we see is it's a pure mental activity of people exchanging ideas. And these people are only doing 3 things. They invent something, they communicate something, they decide something. So I want you to see that when you're doing software development or business, there are only 3 actions. And if we understand these 3 actions, we can understand how to make it better or worse. But I really want you to see that these 3 actions are very sensitive to the mood of the person. If the people don't like each other, they will not invent, communicate, and decide well. So we care a lot about trust. We care a lot about amicability. We care a lot about fear. We care a lot about ego. We care a lot about mood, morale. Because those are the things that speed up and slow down inventing, communicating, and deciding. So there are only 3 moves in this game. These people are solving a problem that they don't understand. Why don't they understand it? Well, we just started. Of course they don't understand it. And the problem keeps changing as they go along. They're creating a solution that they don't understand. Why don't they understand it? Well, they just got started. Of course they don't understand it. And it keeps changing as they go. They're working with people that, guess what? That they don't understand. And that keep changing as they go. And they express their ideas in these funny programming languages that we've got, that they, guess what? They don't understand, and they keep changing as they go. So that's the problem. We're working on a problem we don't understand, and make a solution we don't understand, with people we don't understand, with a language we don't understand, and everything is changing all the time. And in software, the computer is unforgiving of error. It does whatever you wrote. Whatever mistake you wrote, that's what it does. Everybody is making decisions. And that all the decisions have consequences that ripple out across other people. Every decision has got economic consequences, and we're short on people, time, money. We're short on resources. So that on one slide, without any analogies or metaphors, is a short statement of what it is that we're trying to work with. So if you take that slide and you peel apart every single word and you work at it, you find different ways to improve the situation, or you look at things that will damage the situation. So that's what we're wrestling with. And try and find a way to deal with that. Now, before I can go on, I have to back up and talk about learning. How does learning happen? Learning that happens how that happens is very important to the way that we're going to work in the industry. So I'll talk about these 3 words that come from the Japanese words. They come from Aikido. Aikido got them from the Japanese theater, so they go back like 300 years, 400 years, these words do. shoe, and it rhymes with shoe, you know, like shoe. As we make jokes about shoe, we'll find out about that in a moment. Shu means follow. So if you go to a dojo for Aikido or martial arts, the teacher is doing something, and you copy exactly what the teacher does. You don't ask any questions, you don't change anything, you copy the teacher, you follow the teacher. Now it turns out, in general learning, we do this all the time when we learn. So let's say it's your first time making a new recipe. You're going to make bread for the first time in your life. You don't just get flour and throw yeast and flour and things. No, you get a recipe. And you copy exactly the recipe. Right? The first time I ever learned to make paella, I don't just get stuff and throw stuff. No. I get a recipe, I copy everything exactly. Right? If it says this much, powder, I put this much powder. I don't ask any questions. That's shu. Everybody starts with shu. If you're beginning Agile, if you're beginning programmer, if you're beginning designer, if you're beginning tester, if you're beginning anything, you start by saying, how do I do that? And someone gives you a technique. It's okay. You start with that technique. The problem is that some people fall in love with the technique and they get trapped in what I call the shoebox. Shoebox, you know the shoebox, the shoes coming and you buy them, that's a shoebox. So they make a little nest and they have this little, they get this technique, I know how to do extreme programming. I'm never going to move. All I ever am going to do is extreme programming. Right? That's like me. I have one paella recipe, I make it every day for the rest of my life. So I'm sick of paella. I don't know, can you get sick of paella? Yeah, you probably get sick of paella if you eat it every day, right? So then you get finished with the first stage. You decide, okay, the shoebox is too small for me, and now I need some more recipes. I need different bread recipes. I need different project management techniques, different UI design techniques, different testing techniques, whatever. You enter the second stage. The second stage is called Ha. Ha means break. In generalized learning terms, Shu corresponds to learn one technique. Ha corresponds to collect techniques. So you enter a new stage in development where you learn this, you learn that, you learn this, you learn that. I learned to make white bread, brown bread, flat bread, sourdough bread, every kind of bread. That's okay. You learn XP, you learn Kanban, you learn Scrum, you learn FDD, you learn each one of these things. That's normal. If you're lucky and you get good enough, eventually you become a master of the art. This is called Ri. Ri means leave. It's when you leave the dojo, you're done. You've learned everything from this master. It's fluid. If you watch any good cook, the cook doesn't follow a recipe, but the cook looks at the recipe and goes, oh yeah, and then there's something different, right? You find anything in the kitchen, you put it in. If you're a bread maker and you go to the jungles of Brazil, in the Amazon, you make your bread differently than if you go up in the mountains of Peru. You just do it. You don't ask questions. You just feel it. I like little stories. My wife was a very good baker. Absolutely, like really good. Very Ri. I gave my little Ri story about her and bread. So my son was at that time about 10 years old. It's very good if you have active children to have them make bread, because bread, you bang on it. You have a 10-year-old boy, right? You take the bread and you bang and pound it and you make it from it's very good. So I have him there and he's banging the bread and he's picking it up and throwing it down on the counter and all this good stuff. And I call up my wife, she's driving across town, and I say to her, what temperature should I put the oven on? And she says, it needs more water. So she could hear the sound of the bread hitting the counter in the background while she was driving. And she didn't tell me the temperature of the oven. She told me it needs more water. Okay, that's Ri. That's really, really good. Yeah, so I listened to it a bit. I go, yeah, you're right. I can hear it. It needs more water. Now what temperature do I set the oven on, etc., etc. So that's Ri, right? Now the interesting thing is that shu and ri are actually contradictory. That's the interesting part. Everybody who comes in says, teach me one technique. Excuse me, what do you mean I have 5 minutes left? I was told I had an hour. How long is this talk? Okay, I'm done. Are there any questions? You know how to scare me. Inside, it looks like the Batman thing. I expect it's going to next one to say, pow! I'm planning on talking until 10:45 and then take questions. I'm barely starting my talk. I haven't 5 minutes left. That's okay. That's all right. Shu and ri are in contradiction. So everybody starts off and they ask, how do I do that? But you can't run a corporation, international competition and stuff with shu level techniques. You need people who are ri level, who can invent stuff, they blend stuff, they make it up, they move to the left, they move to the right, they use the whole body. You have people managing projects and lead architects and testers who are like the master cook who just puts things in the kitchen. So when the shu level people ask the ri level people for instructions, the ri level people say, I don't know, we'll just do something. And that drives the shu level people crazy because they can't function with, I need a technique. So we need to understand that. You will have shu level people because you always have new people. You have to have some ri level people to be very, very good. And there's a fundamental contradiction between shu and ri. Now to illustrate this, I'd like to illustrate this with some movies, just so it's not so boring to talk. Let's see if I can do this thing here. So I have a couple of movies of diving, and you saw the picture there. I don't have any movies of shu because let's see here, this guy here. So you see this little kid here on the left. So we teach people to dive. You know how we teach children to dive? You take them to the end of the board and you say bend over like this, and you try to make it really, really, really simple. And you start falling. They always straighten up, right? And then they hit the water. They never do it right. But no, bend over, right? That's shu level diving. Does anybody really do shu level diving in the real world? If I look at the Olympics, do they have the little bend over and fall diving competition? No, nobody actually uses the shu level diving technique, but that's what we teach. So I don't have any movies of shu level diving. But I do have this, if I can make my computer work. My Mac and I hate each other, so yeah, my Mac and I hate each other. Alright, so this one I chose for ha. So this is illustrating the level ha. And in this particular case, I was in New Zealand. I went to the home of bungee jumping. And so this is the movie of the bungee jumping. Let's see what we did. I don't, strictly speaking, need the sound on this. I could cut the sound. So that's the place you're going to jump off. This is when bungee jumping was invented. They first jumped off this bridge. Now they have a whole thing there. And then you see, I just got a ri level tattoo that year. So I have a tattoo for ri. And it's 40 meters high. And so, yeah. So I asked them, because I do some diving and stuff, I go, hey, can I do a back flip? They go, no. Can I do a back dive? No. Front flip? No. What can I do? You can go off. So ha, right? Ha level, right? So I've got a things, rope attached to my feet. Presumably I'm not going to die. I can choose what I want to do. So I have to choose, what am I going to do? So I choose something. This is ha, I choose something. I choose just to do a basic fall. I thought, okay, well, I'll do that. Why not? And I wanted to hit the water because sometimes they let you hit the water, but really not hit the water. let this run for a minute because it's kind of fun, because they've been doing this for like 20 years or 25 years. And the way they pick you up at the bottom, right? You ever wonder how they pick you up at the bottom? They just have a boat attached to a rope on the side of the river. And after 20 years, there you see there's the boat. Now watch this. This is kind of funny. That after 20 years, this is still, so I'm hanging here. I'm bored. I'm doing sit-ups. You know, what are you supposed to do? And they hold the stick up. Look, they just hold up the stick. And you have to climb down the stick upside down. Watch this. Catch the stick. And then you climb down. After 20 years, that's all they give you. It's a stick to climb down the boat. And then they'll put you back up the road. And then that's all that's fine. So that's aha. Now for read, I'm going to show you another one, a different one. So this is in Nice, and I went there, and there's this lovely cliff that you get to see, and there's a big sign up at the top. This is no diving, for a very good reason. It's dangerous. So you see all the kids there, everybody's diving anyway. And the police come like once every hour. The police come in a little boat, they tell everybody to go away. Everybody goes away for about 10 minutes, then they come back and they dive. And the next hour, the police come and tell everybody to go away. They do that all the time. So this one is interesting because, as you'll see, let's see if I can just get my PowerPoint up again. There you see the picture on the bottom right. So there's the cliff, right? And it's 7 or 8 meters high, and you have to go 7 or 8 meters out. And there's rocks, and you have to get there. And you only get one try. So this is reed. There's no rope. You don't do back flips off of there. You get one jump, and you just better make it right. There's no ropes. So that's reed. So I'm going to show you that one. So what's interesting in this dive, if you watch, is the whole dive is less than 1 second. And in it, I changed my body position, I don't know how many times. You'll see, and the thing that's really interesting for me is at the level of conscious thinking, I have no idea, but my body is changing itself 2 or 3 times inside of the 1 second. So let's just see this thing go. See how it wiggle? And then my flip-flops come off. So, if we look at that, if I just go backwards for a minute. Come on, boy. I love this part. The shoes come on magically. Wow! But you see how my body position changed? So, at the instant that I push off, the distance is fixed. I can't change my distance anymore. The only thing I can change is the angle of rotation. So at the level of reed, right, this is body reflex, off it goes, and then, I like that picture, it looks like it fell out of the balloon right there. There's that. With the shoes, right? So I do all of that to try to figure out how to get the entry to work. And there you see it works out. There you see the rocks. I missed the rocks. And it comes out good. Like you can't tell right in the middle. It's all going too fast. So that's reed. That's how that's good. So that's reed, Shuhari. So I've been giving this lecture for many years about Shuhari. I found out about Shuhari around 2000, 1999, something like this. I'll give you an example of Shuhari in the methodology business. So I'm in Nokia at some point in time. They tell me to do a scrum with, between the UI designers are in Helsinki, the programmers are in Beijing, in China. And the programmers are complaining because they can't make a sprint commitment, you know, one of the scrum rules. That's not a rule, because it's not one of the 5. But one of the fake scrum rules is about sprint commitment. And they said that programmers say they cannot make a sprint commitment because the UI designers keep changing the design every time, all the time. And so how can they make a sprint commitment? And I said, okay, there's a technique. This is hot, right? I go hot. There's a technique called pipelining. And in pipelining, you have the designers in Helsinki, in Helsinki freeze the design every 2 weeks. They freeze the design for 2 weeks. Then the programmers in Beijing can make a sprint commitment. It's fixed. And then 2 weeks later, the UI designers get to update the design and give a new design. So the design only changes every 2 weeks. It's called the official name for this is pipelining. And they said, yeah, well, we sent the programmers to Beijing, and they didn't have any trouble. And I said, well, of course not. 3 people speak like that. They said, well, of course not. Well, of course not, because if the UI designers, the Finnish people, are in Beijing, they're in the conversation all the time. And the Chinese programmers understand about the changes in the design before they happen. So now when the designers go, okay, so we've been talking about it, yeah, let's do this. For the programmers, it's not a problem. They're inside the conversation. So in that circumstance, you can do what's called concurrent engineering, and everybody just works all together in parallel. But now you see we have two completely opposite strategies. If the UI designers are in Helsinki, we do pipelining, and if they're in Beijing, we do concurrent development. Those are opposite strategies. So you see, we've got the same company, we have the same people, we have the same project, we have the same technology, we have the same everything. We only fly 2 people from Helsinki to Beijing, and now we use the opposite strategy. So that's RE. That's RE-level thinking inside of a methodology context. So you see how RE works, right? You change things all the time. Now what I care about is the science of that. How would you understand that that's an appropriate thing to do? That's what I study. But right now we're just on Shuhai-Ri. So that's Shuhai-Ri, and I've been talking about that for 15 years. Now, to try to get back to Korasoberhi, the heart of Agile, here's an interesting graph that says, as you become better at your activity, whatever your activity is, and you go Shuhai-Ri, things become more complicated. So you just shoot level, you just use one technique, whatever that is. You get the high, you run Scrum, XP, DSDM, Lean, Kanban, you run everything. When you get to re-level people are really annoying because they say, I can't tell you, I can't even tell you, it's too complicated. Just let me do it. It turns out, so I was looking for a word that would fit inside the Japanese tradition, Shuhai-Ri, and I found this word, Kokoro, in Chinese, Shin. And I have a Kokoro tattoo because I have a Ri tattoo, I have a Kokoro tattoo, obviously. Kokoro is radical simplification for the purposes of teaching. So it's not in the same category. You don't say, I am better than Ri, I am now Kokoro. No. Ri is the top level for performing. But if you look at the people in any skill area, who are super, ultra expert teachers. What they do is they find the essence, the magical center of anything, and they say, just learn the basics. Just learn the basics. Now you guys have seen the movie Karate Kid. I'm very happy the movie Karate Kid comes out. And I was taught my Spanish guys, what's the word for wax on, wax off? You guys know it, right? Wax on, wax off, paint the fence. Wax on, wax off, paint the fence. So Miyagi is Kokoro. He's obviously reading when he's doing his own thing, but when he's teaching, he's Kokoro. He says, just master the basics. And the kid is very annoying, right? Give me something complicated. But what about this? But what about this? But what about this? But what about this? Wax off, paint the fence. Wax on, wax off, paint the fence. So Kokoro level people are annoying because they just tell you to master the basics. It turns out that the symbol Kokoro was used by the master samurai Musashi to describe samurai stuff in the late 1600s. And so this word Kokoro was perfect because he would say the essence of the samurai is this, or the heart of the samurai is this. So I said, okay, this is the word that I want because what I care about is what is Cockburn for Agile. But before we get to Cockburn for Agile, I should show you Cockburn for guiding. So where's my Cockburn for guiding thing? So here is the same cliff 2 years later. This one's in slow motion, it's very nice. And it shows you what happens when you get to this Cockburn level. The problem with Cockburn level is there's nothing to watch. It's so simple. So this is Cockburn level, the same guy, Cockburn. And you'll notice here there's no motion, there's no wiggle, there's no nothing. Nothing. I couldn't teach anybody what to do from that, because when you watch someone Cockburn level, well, of course the sandals come off, you know, still have the sandals and all this and that stuff. Now let's watch it one more time. Nothing. So that's Cockburn for diving. Now, what I wanted to do to make this more interesting for you guys was to look at Cockburn for music. So this is Dizzy Gillespie, and I love this because he is now describing something so simple, but he's so good. So we'll listen to what he has to say. It's an interview, and the guy is asking him some question. Let's find out what he says.
No, let's talk about what talk about the difference. That's difficult to talk about the difference. We talk about the unity.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
We have a beat. Well, we have a beat where we pray. They don't do that. Tuning. You tuning. You get yes. I'm going to say
This is like the ultimate masters. When you look at the best musicians, the best jazz musicians, Miles Davis, those guys, they get simple. They don't get complicated. They get simple. So that's Cockburn with music, and I have that because I want to contrast that with this guy. This guy's obviously a great musician. He obviously read, but I think he could take some lessons in Cockburn, and you'll see. After listening to Dizzy Gillespie, suddenly I have trouble with this guy, but he's marvelous. Let's listen to him. In there. After listening to Dizzy Gillespie, he gave me that simple Brazilian thing. Suddenly the guy to me is like, it's too complicated. He should really simplify it. So anyway, so that is Shiva Reed and Cockburn. And so I wanted to find out what is the essence of Agile. Right? What's the heart of Agile? What's the essence? What's the simplification? And what I came up with was these 4 words. So I claim that these 4 words are all unique. The nice thing about these 4 words is that they need no explanation. Collaborate. Well, you know if you're collaborating or not. You know if it's good or bad. In fact, you know what you have to do to make it better. It's not a mystery. Collaborate. If you collaborate better, things will go better. Deliver. Deliver for feedback. Deliver for income. Those are different things. Deliver. Now, deliver is more complicated. You have to learn how to do micro-incremental development slices. You have to get your delivery pipeline working. All of this stuff. It's more complicated. It's a technical issue, but it's not a mystery to deliver. Reflexionar, to reflect, to think about what you're doing. Take a moment and think about what's happening. Look at your data analytics. The web analytics these days are crazy information. Beautiful. Talk about the team, about their emotions. Are they happy? Are they sad? Stop and think. And then improve, little by little, by little, by little. There are actually two loops here. Collaborate, reflect on the collaboration, improve the collaboration. Collaborate, reflect on the collaboration, improve the collaboration. Deliver, reflect on the delivery, improve the delivery. Those two loops. Now the interesting thing, when I first did this, I said, so is that it? 4 words? That's all I got. 4 words. What am I going to do with 4 words? It turns out that with these 4 words, they expand into many, many interesting things. In fact, they expand into everything. Everything fits into these 4 words very nicely. So if you expand and you open up collaboration, you get the actual act of collaborating, but you suddenly find yourself with the word trust. Trust is a big topic. Trust is huge. There are people consulting on trust, investigating, scientists, there are books. There are all kinds of things you do about trust. Trust is huge. If you look at delivery, there are the external aspects of delivery, delivery for learning, delivery for income. There are the internal aspects of delivery, all of the lean, Kanban, lean processes, Toyota manufacturing, work in progress, queue management, all of that stuff is inside internal flow. Inside of reflection, we've got the web analytics, we've got the emotional stuff. Inside of improvement, we have the idea of experiments. We have borrowing things from psychology, solutions-focused therapy and solutions-focused coaching is what we're borrowing from. It's very modern, very up-to-date. These things expand even more. In the delivery category, we don't just deliver for money, we actually deliver for learning. That's the topic of 2014, 15, 16, 17. Everybody's focused on how do we deliver for learning. Inside of collaboration, we have motivation. Suddenly politics are in there. What are the reward structures? How are the bonuses paid? The people, the executives, the management, performance bonuses, raises. Right? What's your annual review look like? All of these things come in there. So this expands. And the shuhari inside of each of these. So every one of these things has a beginning technique, a collection of techniques, and a peak performance in everywhere. So everything fits here. So it's very, very complicated. Life is complicated. You go back to work, and everything is very complicated. And I'll show you just a couple of the expansions here that are kind of interesting. So I'm going to go down one pathway. I'm going to go down the pathway called collaboration. And I did a study about 10 years ago. What improves collaboration? And at the end of that, I produced these cards. The people who were in my advanced class this last week, they all got copies of the cards. They'll get fresh copies of the cards. You guys can all print up and use. They're in Spanish now. There are very specific actions that you can take to improve collaboration. This is shoe-level collaboration. I won't describe it here, but I'm just saying it's there, right? It's one of the things that we learn about. If we look at delivery, we look at lean manufacturing, and here I need to introduce a concept for you guys that's very, very important. And that is that design work looks like manufacturing if we think of our inventory not as mechanical parts, not as user stories, not as lines of code, but as decisions that people are making. Everybody in the company is making decisions. Remember that was on the first slide. And everybody's waiting on somebody else to make some decision. You have a chain of decisions. You're waiting for your boss to decide what the target market is. You're waiting for your lead architect to decide what the technology platform is going to be. You're waiting for your marketing people people to tell you what show are we supposed to be delivering to, who's our strategic partner. These are all decisions, they're not lines of code. We're waiting for the UX people to decide something about the design. We're waiting for the testing people to do something about it. Everybody's waiting on everybody for some decisions. If we make a graph of who's waiting on whom for what sorts of decisions, we get a picture like this. And this picture looks a lot like a manufacturing flow line. And what is really interesting is that it has all the same properties, the same mathematical properties, as a manufacturing flow line. So suddenly, all of the mathematics and all of the knowledge from Toyota manufacturing, lean manufacturing, agile manufacturing, operations research, everything applies to design, up here design activities, because we're waiting on decisions. And so we get the idea that it's a bad idea to have lots of decisions, just like Toyota doesn't like to have a lot of car parts inside the factory. They try to balance the flow. So when we look at design work, we don't like to have a lot of decisions stacked up. It slows down the network. So if you have a big requirements document, it might have 50,000 decisions in it. And you hit that, the developers and designers with a packet of 50,000 decisions, and then they write all this code. They make 100,000 decisions, and they code it up. And they hit the testers with 100,000 decisions, and the testers, suddenly, boom, 100,000 decisions show up. And they sift through and try to find which decisions are wrong. And they find 3,000 bugs, and then the programmers get hit with bug report, 3,000 bugs they have to fix. Very bad network properties. Very bad. This is, if I think of my favorite, I think about the airport from hell. I will make it, just for fun, I'll make it a mixture of Russian and Chinese. I'll just take the worst stereotype knowledge I have, Russian and Chinese airports and shopping systems. And it goes like this. You get off your plane, 200 people come off of a Boeing 787. And you're in, I don't know, you're in Hong Kong, why not? And then, or you're in, I don't know where you are, you're someplace. And you come and you run to get ahead of everybody in the line because you have a friend waiting for you on the outside of the airport. And the friend wants to know how long before you come out. So you want to be ahead of everybody else in your airplane. So you run as fast as you can, and you turn a corner, and suddenly you find you're at the back of another airplane that just came in from someplace else. So now you have 2 people in front of you and 200 people behind you. And you get in the line and you wait through and you get your passport stamped. And then you go and you get your suitcases. But now in the airport from hell, you have to take all your suitcases and go back to the first line with all your suitcases. And there's 400 people, but now there's 800 people because and half of them have suitcases. And you have to go get your passport stamped the second time. And then you have to have your stuff x-rayed to make sure there's no fruit and vegetables and biological weapons and all that stuff. And your friend has no idea when are you going to come out, when are you going to show up out of the system. This is what we do in software development, where we make a big requirements document and we send it down, 50,000 decisions, 100,000 decisions, 3,000 bugs, everything's going, when is the software going to come? When is anything going to come out? And the decisions decay over time. Those requirements may have been good requirements when they were written, but the world is changing. The longer a decision sits inside that organization, the more likely it is to be wrong by the time it comes out. So we want to convert this to very small requests. I won't even call them requirements. Very small requests that come in one at a time. This is why we have tiny user stories. You work on something, a tiny feature, you send it to testing. You find a bug, maybe, or 2. That's fine, you fix it, it's not a problem. And you deliver it, you get it out, and now you load balance. The entire organization is moving at the same speed. Nobody works faster. Nobody works faster. But things come in and go out a lot quicker. The length of time any decision sits inside the organization is much, much smaller. This is what we want. I didn't make nobody thinks faster, nobody writes faster, but the whole organization moves faster. Constant request latency. So that's borrowing from manufacturing into design, using the idea that decisions are inventory, internal inventory, and we have to get them out of the organization into the world to find out what's wrong. Remember I said at the beginning, solving a problem they don't understand. We don't know if the requirements are right. They're probably wrong. We don't know where. Creating a solution they don't understand. We have to get these things out to find out where we're wrong. The essence of the question is, we have to find out where we're wrong. We know we're wrong somewhere. Where? That's the game we're playing. And that takes us to 2016. 2016 is very different than 2012. It's very different than 2003. Most people are practicing Scrum like it's 2003. That was 13 years ago. 2015, 16, 17. Everybody is focused on getting the decisions out of the company into the market to find out where is it wrong. We're into hypothesis testing. Hypothesis-based development means, I'm not asking, is it done like it's a feature program? I mean asking, is the question correct? Is the hypothesis about the market correct? Done means it's in the market and I have tested it. That's what done means. Done doesn't mean I coded it. So that's delivering for learning. Now, I want to shift because here I was looking at delivery at the internal aspects, the internal flow. Now I want to shift into deliver for learning. Okay, we're going to shift over. There's 4 things we want to learn about. We want to learn about the business. We want to learn about the people we're working with. We have to learn about the people we're working with so we can work better together. We have to learn all the technical stuff, performance, compatibility, load testing, all that stuff. And we have to learn how much is it going to cost. We have to learn about the cost. So here is the shift I'm going to make. In the Big Bang waterfall integration kind of a project, because we have all that inventory, all of the learning happens at the end. It's very expensive. It's very fragile. It's very unpredictable. It's got all the bad properties. We want to take that moment of learning and make it happen early in a tiny little piece. Remember that little tiny flow. But we're asking questions of the 4 areas. We want a learning curve to go like that. We want to optimize for knowledge acquisition early so we can decide, so we can steer what we're delivering and to whom we're delivering it. We have these 4 things to learn about. What should we be building? Who are we working with? How do I work best with these people? What are all the technical aspects and how much is this going to cost? How long is this going to take anyway? The benefit, if you work this way, is that the knowledge acquisition flattens out. The business value starts off steep and flattens out. And now the business is control a very fine-grained movement of deliver earlier with less, or deliver later and make it shiny and polished and rich, bug-free, sweet. But if it's, you have to deliver something for Christmas and it's November 25th, you can't delay until January 2nd. You have to deliver on whatever day that is, the magical Friday. So this window, this mode of behavior gives the business a chance to do fine-grained steering toward the end and deliver early, deliver late. The cool thing about this is the only thing I know, this curve, that works for projects of 1 person, 3 people, or 3,000 people. This works at any scale. This works for Nokia with 7,000 people and 150 applications integrating on 120 products that they deliver each year. This works for Nokia. works for 3 people, 2 people working together on a little project. It's the only thing I know that works across all projects. So that's just an illustration of how you expand the heart of Agile into a very complicated, very reed-level territory. But the kokoro is that you don't have to think about it as complicated. What you have to think about is just those 4 words. Just collaborate, deliver, reflect, improve. And I just give you 3 questions for each. It's not that hard. If you want to get started with the heart of Agile, just ask, everybody ask, who do you need to collaborate with? What is the quality of that collaboration? What can I do to improve it? And if everybody asks that in teams and as individual people, then the collaboration will improve. I'm delivering the same thing. What are the obstacles to fine-grained incremental delivery? Do you know how to make little tiny slices to deliver? If not, it's a technique to learn. And then what can you do to improve it? So that's the end. I've taken you on a big tour, our Agile, read, adding kokoro, decisions as inventory, the idea of learning in incremental steps, maybe learn and knowledge acquisition. In the end, what I want to leave you with is no matter what industry you're in, no matter where you are, you can actually just work with the heart of Agile, these 4 words. Now, where's my timer? Hey, I had 5 minutes, 7 minutes ago. I'm 2 minutes over schedule. This poor girl, she's going to like die. I'm going to buy you a beer tonight. We have a dance. That's okay. We have time. I specifically have time for questions. There's a microphone. If you want to ask your question in Spanish, that's okay. Ask the question in Spanish because Paul's going to translate it. If you have somebody with English or Spanish, whatever you like.
Well, thank you so much for your comments. I would like to know if you think that everybody can get to that kokoro feeling, that kokoro feeling. Le preguntaba que si cree que todo el mundo puede llegar a kokoro, que no me gustaría después de escuchar. Thank you so much.
What did she say? I'm used to his about speaking. He's in my class, I understand.
All right. Did you understand the question?
No, so take it to Paul, he's going to tell me.
All right.
They understood your question, but I didn't. That's okay. I know where. Paul, what's the question? Paul didn't understand either. No, you have to put the mic up there, I can hear you.
Okay, what I think she's trying to say is that how do you get to kokoro, and if everyone is able to get to kokoro?
Oh, yes, and I'm glad you asked the question. It turns out that kokoro is confusing. You don't have to get the kokoro because I got the kokoro. Right? In the terms of Mr. Miyagi, not every karate person has to be Mr. Miyagi. Mr. Miyagi is the teacher. Mr. Miyagi says learn the basics. Not everybody has to be Mr. Miyagi. We need one Miyagi, that's me. Wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off, and paint the fence. Yeah, that's all you have to do. I gave you the kokoro. You don't have to be kokoro. I gave you the kokoro. So kokoro is a teaching level. It's not the level of performing. If I go back to, let's see if I'm lucky here. This is what you have to do, shuhari. My job is kokoro. Your job is shuhari. And shu is too simple. I think that everybody here understands the word collaborate. Right? You know if you're doing it. You know if it's working. You know how to do it. I don't have to teach you anything about collaborate. Deliver is tricky. Deliver, you have to learn shuhari about delivery, right? So the kokoro, when I say this thing here, let's see if I get this. My point is, I want to make it so simple that it's easy for you to do it. You say, we are going to do the corazón de aquí. We are going to do Agile no Cockburn. We are going to do the heart of Agile. Just means we're going to just focus on 4 things. Collaborate, deliver, reflect, improve. Right? I did the choosing of the words. I've been testing this for 2 years. People who have been doing Agile for 20 years are very happy with this particular choice of words. They go, yeah, that works. Let's go. Okay, so thank you for that, because people think that you have to move to Kokoro. No, you don't have to move to Kokoro. You move to Shibari. That's performing. Look at the Kokoro. I did the Kokoro part. You just do the 4 words. Wax up. And I have a fence that needs painting. You can come and paint my fence later. Okay, another question. We have time for more. A couple more questions. Maybe somebody back there so we can watch Power Writing. What? Did you all become a Norwegian or something? Norwegians don't ask any questions. Spanish people ask questions. That's it.
Good morning. Alistair, thank you for your...
It's not working. Turn it off.
Morning. Alistair, thank you for your speech. I have a couple of questions, different ones. So first, you mentioned before that Scrum is not being the same way during the last year. That's evolved. So my question is, how Scrum has evolved during the last 15 years? And the other ones, you were all time focusing on the, let's say, the basics or realities for concepts. So how can you avoid or keep it simple when things in the companies gets more complex and they start to introduce new processes and Scrum become a mess?
Okay, thank you. So the 2 questions: what happened with Scrum in the last 15 years, and what do you do when the company's trying things out and the processes are very complex, complicated? Good questions. The problem, the difficulty with Scrum is it's too simple. When Scrum came out in 1994, I read the first article, I didn't understand anything because it had no rules. Scrum has 5 rules. I'll tell you the 5 rules of Scrum. First, demo or deliver every sprint. Demo or deliver every sprint. That's the delivery part, by the way, of the heart of Agile, right? I go back, right? That's deliver. Scrum says demo or deliver every sprint. Preferably deliver, but you can demo. Rule 2 says, in principle, management collected a group of people with enough skill to solve the problem. That's the job of management, is to get the correct people together. Having gotten the correct people together, management stops interfering and lets the team do their work themselves. The short form of that is, let the team decide. The team decides everything because they know what they're supposed to do and they're good enough to do it. After rule 2, you can't get any more rules because the team decides everything. Right? So without any more rules are made up. That's the hard part that I didn't understand in 1994. The presupposition of Scrum is we're dealing with adult people who are trained in their specialty. You don't have to tell them how to do their work. If you are telling them how to do their work, you're not doing Scrum. The baseline idea of Scrum is you're all people who are good enough. That's why you hired them. Now, leave them alone and let them do their work. So now when you look at Scrum as you're doing it in your company, you can see how all the stuff got added in. The third rule. This is a very complicated, tricky business we're doing, so we need to inspect and adapt every single day because things are changing so fast. Every day we have to look at what's happening. And every sprint, we have to inspect and adapt and change our process and direction and all that. So you see, Scrum already has the heart of Agile in it. Collaborate, deliver, reflect, improve. It's in Scrum. There are two more roles to finish Scrum. First, what is the role of the Scrum Master? The Scrum Master, the phrase is, it is a good idea if there is somebody with some spare capacity to remove obstacles so that everybody else can go at full speed. We want the best programmers programming, the testers testing, the UX people designing. We want everybody to be going as fast as they can. We don't want our best programmer wandering the halls of the organization trying to get a signature, 3 signatures to go to a conference. That shouldn't be what the best programmers are doing. So the Scrum Master has some spare capacity to do all of these things so that everybody else can go fast. That is the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master has no power. The Scrum Master is the person who gets everything just going smooth. That's Scrum Master. Whatever you've heard about the rules of a Scrum Master, that's made up. The value and the purpose of a Scrum Master is to move the things so everybody else can go full speed. The last one is the role of the product owner. The product owner solves 2 problems. The first problem is that marketing and sales people show up and they tell the programmer, hey, I'm about to sell a big sale. If you put this feature in, then I get a big bonus, right, when we make the sale. And we have that happening, and then the programmers don't know what they should work on anymore because they keep being told different things. So we have one and only one person who sorts out the priorities for the working so that nobody has to be confused. The other is that the programmers ask the business people for clarification. What does this mean? What does this mean? And they get different answers, and then they're all confused. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So we have the same solution. The product owner, one human body, who sorts out all of the clarifications for the questions so the programmers don't get confused. 5 sentences. Everything else is added on as shoe level. So they had these 5 rules back in 1994, and nobody could understand it. In 1994, we didn't have the concept like we do today, that actually these are adults. They know what to do. Just leave them alone. They'll figure it out. We didn't have the concept. We thought you had to tell everybody what to do. But the baseline concept in Scrum is, these are trained adults. Let them work it out. It's their job. So there's no more rules. Now, time goes by, people come to shoe level, they write questions to Ken Schwaber. Hey, what questions? How do I do a daily stand-up meeting? How long is it supposed to take for the planning? What are we supposed to do in the planning session? Right? So Ken Schwaber, a nice guy, is a friendly guy. He answers the questions. He puts it in writing in the book. Boom! Suddenly we have 150 rules on Scrum. Shoe level rules. So Scrum has become shoe level. We lost the essence of Scrum, which is these people are trained adults. Let them figure it out. That's what they're supposed to do. So that's the Scrum. For the big company, it's a good question. You'll be using safe, more, less, Prince 2, I don't know what, right? It gets very complicated. That's why I chose these words. Whatever process you're working with, every now and then just like clear everything off the table and just say, so, how's collaboration working? How do we improve collaboration? How's delivery working? How do we get that little delivery thing going better? I don't care what your process is. Life will be complicated when you go. Every now and then, just empty everything out and just say, so, how do we improve collaboration? How do we improve delivery? Do we actually stop for a moment? Let's stop for a moment and think about what's happening here. Reflect. What is our next little improvement? You can do that no matter what process you're following. So that's the end of the time. Those are really great questions. I took all the time to answer those because it took us a few crises. Thank you very much, everybody.